Blended workforces are one of the hottest talent strategies today, where employers are using a mix of traditional employees with external resources like independent contractors, coaches, consultants, vendors, and technology solutions, all in order to enhance competitiveness, ensure cost flexibility, and expedite business goals. But how are the successful companies infusing blended workforces into their business strategy? And what are the critical success factors and pitfalls to avoid during implementation? And on the flip side, what does it really take for suppliers to improve their chances of finding and landing contract opportunities? The devil is in the details, my friends. I'm your host, Karen Farrell Rhodes, and it's time to get smarter about blended workforces at work. Hello, my superstars. This is Karen, and welcome to another episode of the Blended Workforces at Work podcast. We are super excited that you joined us today, and we have a tremendous guest on today's episode that's going to share a bit more that's from his perspective on the supplying external talent from the vendor side of the house. And we're honored to welcome on today's show, Mr. Russell Meiselman, and hopefully I didn't murder his name, Meiselman, who's the president and co-founder of ClarkStaff. And ClarkStaff is a remote staffing agency that helps companies gain access to a wide range of global outsourced talent. And under Russell's leadership, ClarkStaff has really expanded their operations across all locations, including recently launching a new 5,000 square foot office in the Philippines. And I can't wait to hear more about that. What's unique, there are quite a few outsources out there, but what is really unique is about their approach to global talent and, how they partner with companies across the globe. And they are founded here in the US, so that they have to tackle, a lot of challenges in other countries where they do locate and use talent. So definitely an interesting perspective. And I can't wait to learn more. But so welcome to the show, Russell.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here today.
Oh, thank you. We're so excited to have you. Well, there's so many questions. I can't wait to delve deep into what you all do in your business and how you all help companies. But before we go there, we always love to learn a little bit about a guest. And so, for as much as you feel comfortable, can you give us just a small sneak peek into your life outside of work?
Yeah, chaotic. No, I just had a newborn baby, little
Oh,
baby Eleanor. Yeah, thank you.
congratulations.
Yeah, she's 3 months old, first
Oh,
baby. So it's a lot. It's
yeah.
definitely a shift. We have locations and staff in 6 different countries, and I'm just used to traveling and working. And sort of my wife has put up with me for the last 10 years in this model, and I just don't know if the baby will. So we're gonna figure that out over the next year and see how that goes. But that's the biggest change for me. It's right now that's consuming my life. But outside of the new baby, I like golf. I don't mean just like the occasional Sunday round. I'm a little obsessed. I have to be honest.
Okay, so you and my husband are brothers from other mothers because he is as well. He's even now deep into, and I don't even know what you call it, but it's on TV now. The Inside tournaments that
Mm-hmm.
Tiger Woods
Yeah.
has
The
won,
the TGL. Yeah.
the TGL, and
Yeah.
I'm like, what in the world? But he loves golf. He loves
Yeah.
playing it. He loves watching it. Anything golf related, he's there.
Yeah. I wish I wasn't. If I have, it's a really expensive hobby. I'm not very
It
good,
is.
and I would wish it wasn't such a big part of my life, but I guess it is. So what are you gonna do?
And one little tidbit, when we go on vacations, I always have to dedicate a day for him to go golfing because he loves to try different courses around the world. And so I make it my spa day, or I'll go with him and drive the cart. But
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I'm
he
very
loves.
similar. Half of our vacations, the locations that we choose are because I want to play at a particular course. So
Same
it's
here.
not
Oh
about
my
the
God.
beaches or the beautiful mountain views or wherever we're going. It's usually like, oh, that course is amazing. We're staying in this town. That's what
Yeah.
we're doing. And the wife, luckily, she puts up with it. So it's a
Well, I love sports in general. I won't say I'm a golf fanatic, but I love sports in general. So I'm game. It's okay.
Yeah.
it makes it a great vacation for both of us because we have other things we do. But anyway, long story short, it's
Yep.
just funny that you mentioned that.
Yep.
Well, thanks for sharing, Russell.
Yeah,
Really
absolutely.
appreciate it. All right. Well, let's get down into the nitty gritty if we can. I'd love for you to start out by sharing with our listeners a little bit more about ClarkStaff, what it does and how it operates and
Yeah.
who it helps serves.
So we have a bunch of different services. Outsourcing is actually it's a really old industry. It's not new. Obviously the pandemic and I love your podcast, the blended workforce, this idea that, companies are starting to sort of realize that remote or freelance gig workers and, just getting things done outside of the traditional I need to hire a W-2, right? But to be fair, in the outsourcing space, in our industry, it's been around forever. And the truth is most of the users of outsourcing would be those sort of Fortune 1000 large corporate organizations, and everybody knows, when they think outsourcing, the first thing that comes to mind is going to be customer service or tech support or whatever it is, right? When you call Amazon or if you call American Express or your bank, you're getting somebody on the phone and they tend to be overseas and they're dealing with that sort of like tier one level customer service. That is call center work, in my opinion. It does fit within outsourcing, but what we do is just really different. And so I would say we're a subsect niche of the industry. And the reason we're called BPOs, which is business process outsourcing, is companies like mine tend to take over entire business processes from various sizes of organization. So everything from small sort of startup companies to larger corporations, which we do work with a few, but we tend to stay away from the call center work just because there's companies that have been doing it for 25 years or 40 years and they have that stuff packed down. We
Yeah.
really primarily service more in the professional services space, meaning everything from accountants to engineers and architects to nurses, doctors and lawyers, graphic designers, video editors, all of that sort of like other stuff that would be employed by certain organizations, right? And so what we do particularly is we primarily house and employ these sort of professional level workers that get assigned then to particular customers, right? So if we'll just use a finance company or a wealth management company as an example, and you have books, you have, your books that you got to keep, AR, AP, you have financial analysts and reports that you need to do. Most of the sort of wealth management part of these finance companies in terms of decision on investments and moving money around, that's usually done by the local, right? Or the executive team or upper management. But there
Right.
are just administrative work that needs to be done, whether that be writing content and blogs for the website, whether that be just managing the books, whether payables for the vendors and service providers and so on. And some of this stuff can be done by local employees, and that's obviously the more traditional way of doing things. What we've basically leveraged and the biggest value add that we bring to most companies, small or large, is so some of these functions really just can't be justified profitability wise to do locally, right? Like your tax filings, they're important. You have to do them, otherwise the IRS is coming in and putting chains on the door, right?
Right.
But it's not making you money. It's a cost of doing business. And to use a third party or something like that locally can sometimes get expensive, but you can have a full-time accountant, for example, offshore, and it might only cost you, $2,000 a month or whatever
Yeah.
the number is, and they can do managerial reports, they can do your taxes, they can manage your normal books and all of that stuff. And that's really the value. It's more of helping these smaller and medium sized businesses leverage more profitability that tend to be reinvested in the organization to grow. The sort of partnership that we look for. So that's our service. That's what we do. I mean, you can think of any role, any industry. There is very limited or unlimited in terms of options of what we can do. There's obviously some roles that we can't, right? We can't hire a mail clerk for you. It requires
Right.
somebody to physically be there. Your receptionist can't be replaced. Like somebody has to greet them at the door. There's things that can't be done. But if it doesn't require them to be physically in any one location, then outsourcing could be an option. Yeah.
It's so interesting you said that because obviously, I try to be a thought leader in the space and I do a lot of thought leadership from the HR's perspective. And there's a ton of research studies out there, Deloitte, the Gartner's.
KPMG.
But
Yep. Yep.
anyway, long story short, they have said that up to 50 or 60% of the traditional job descriptions, tasks on job descriptions could be done by an outsourced individual and it's time now for companies to kind of relook and rethink, especially from a cost and profitability perspective, of really having a more sound strategy of how work gets done. And it does not necessarily have to be with one of your FTEs. It could be from an external expert resource as well. And I think that's where, ClarkStaff shines. I'm
Yeah,
curious when you all pitch companies, or do you pitch, I guess I should ask,
sure.
but when you have conversations, what are some of their top concerns or pushbacks or questions that they have for you all?
So yeah, we do obviously we take on new business, but we don't do very much marketing or sales really in general. A lot of what we do is referral based, and the reason for that is you can't really sell what we do, I would say. I mean, you can, but we tend to think it's better for us to not sell. If somebody needs to fill a role or build out a department, they have to be in the headspace to do it, right? It's not something that I could, hire a couple of cold callers or email marketers to generate leads and then sell them on a service, and it's a 30-day no contract obligation. Like, you know what I mean? Can you force a deal through? Yes. But what we're really looking for is more of that partnership sort of relationship. We work with our customers on both the consultative and the staffing side. So there's just a lot going on there. It's tough. You got to be in a space to do it. So that's to answer that question.
Yeah.
The biggest reason people go to outsourcing is financial, right? It always comes down to I need more people and I can't afford to hire that many more locally, right? I
Right.
have a little bit of a budget. What can I do with this? Well, how can I maximize this amount of money? And that's the reason why most companies start, but it's not why they stay. I was really surprised myself to learn that's not why they stay. That's not why they continue. That's not why they expand. What it comes down to for a lot of companies, at least that we work with, that they'll start in year one with, let's say, 3 or 4 or 5 outsourced staff. And by the end of, 18 months or 24 months, they have 20 plus people. And the reason that growth happens isn't because they love the cost savings and they're just replacing a bunch of local workers. They get to elevate and build out departments the right way. And what I mean by that, I'll give an example of, a marketing team, a marketing department. In the States, we tend to be able to afford what we call digital marketers or multimedia specialists, where they wear a lot of hats, right?
Right.
They do the social media and they do the content and they do, you list down the list of any particular role type, and they do 25 different jobs. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's great that they have the skills and the ability to do that. But if you want somebody that is a professional, and I mean really like a certified Google AdWords SEO person, right? Do you have time or the money to afford somebody that can do that in the States? Probably not. But
Right.
for the cost of doing it in the Philippines, as an example, you could get an SEO, a content writer, a link builder, 2 or 3 roles for the price of one. And each of those people are professionals in their space. And so that's why they do it. They tend to grow is because they realize, oh, okay, instead of having a blended AR and AP, bookkeeper and accountant, I could actually separate and have the proper controls, right? Have AR separated from AP, and I can have a controller, like I can elevate my current accountant to be the controller within the organization. I have a bookkeeper, I'm going to make them the G&A manager, right? And so
Right.
they get to elevate the people that are there. So the way I always look at it, in the biggest conversation that we have in the initial stages is don't replace. Don't go off. Once you discover outsourcing, don't just go fire a bunch of people. That's not what you want to do. What you
Right.
want to do is take a look at what people are doing in their 8-hour day. Find those 3-4 hours in everybody's job, because everybody has them, of those tasks that don't require a high level of industry or company knowledge, or I don't want to say skill because that's not the right word, but that doesn't require that level of person to do. Anyone can do those 2 or 3 hours with the task, but the work has to get done.
Right.
Those are the tasks that you offshore.
Yeah.
And let your people, if they're a salesperson, don't have them spend 3 hours a day doing administrative work of raising orders. Have them out there selling, building those relationships, and maintaining your customer base. If your accountant is really somebody that you value in making financial decisions for your business, don't have them updating your general ledger for 3 hours a day. That's not a good use of their time. Have them do reports. Have them get more involved in operations side to give the advice that you need as an executive leader to make those decisions for your organization to actually grow. So, at least for me, the most important thing when people get in outsourcing and the biggest conversations that we have in those initial stages.
I love that you said is, and the advice you give is don't immediately just fire everybody. What I see your service doing is providing air cover for them to continue to fly the plane while they can figure out more efficiencies down the line. It gives them the space to continue to get the work done because the work has to get done, but then it gives them that air cover to go back, like you said, on the strategic side and allow them to make some major decisions of what they could outsource versus not, and then how to better use their internal expertise if you're able to take some of these labor intensive tasks away.
Yeah, so I mean, you look at it from a team leader side. I was just in Pittsburgh last week, very large organization. Obviously, I won't say the name, and they're fantastic. They're a great group of people, privately owned, but very, very large business. And when you go into the, let's call it, middle management level, and you interact and you work with these managers, they don't nearly spend enough time on the strategic side, meaning improving the department. How
Right.
can we take this process that's so vital to the organization and improve it, make it more efficient, integrate technologies, start using AI, start using more automation tools so that way errors can be reduced or whatever it is. They don't.
Right.
They're stuck in the trenches of getting the work done because they're strapped on time. There's only so many hours in the day, and really, I think even at the lower levels of management, team leader, per supervisory sort of levels, they need at least an hour minimum, really ideally two a day, to be able to have the time to stare at the wall and think strategically, right?
That's
Like,
right.
take off that tactical sort of helmet and
Yeah.
put on that strategic hat. How can I improve? What can I do to make this better, faster, more efficient, more accurate, whatever it is? But in most businesses, that's not the case, right? The employee shows up at 9 a.m., they're grinding as hard as they can till 5, doing the work that has to be done, and there's zero improvement. And so you'll see companies like the one I was at where they're still doing stuff real manual. Like, it's a humongous organization. And I really mean that financially and number of employees. And they have locations across the globe. And their managers are just, they don't have the time to sit and strategically think. And that's part of it is not the utilization of outsourcing, but also part of it is just that work sort of allocation, right? Like, how much of it should be on the manager, how much of it be on the rank and file. And that's really important to, from an executive perspective, to take that in consideration. Well, I don't want my manager staring at a wall for 2 hours. You really do.
Yeah,
You
you do.
really do. I think
Yeah.
more than you think you do, right? Like, they will improve things because they're the boots on the ground that are going to get stuff and move your company forward on the technology front, on the service level front, on every front. They're the people to make changes and improvements. Like, you can sit
Are
in a
they
boardroom all you want,
concerned?
but
Are they ever concerned about, location, especially with this whole, return to the office initiative that's going on in the US?
sure,
Are they ever concerned about them being
7,000 miles away.
overseas?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I mean, I would say that's the biggest barrier for everybody initially, right? It's like, how do I manage them? What are the
Yeah.
right protocols? What are best practices for managing remote employees? Cultural stuff, right?
Right.
We have, I would like to sit here and pretend that every single engagement that we've had with every department head or manager or company that we've worked with has been successful, but sometimes it doesn't work. And a lot
Yeah.
of that comes down to the manager themselves, usually not the business owners, but the managers themselves tend to have a hard time with either culture and or learning how to train, manage, and work with people
Remote
remote,
workers.
regardless of whether it's offshore or onshore. It's just
Right.
remote in general.
Yeah.
Just, and there's things to learn there, right? I don't think as organizations we spend, and I say this as a whole, I don't think we spend enough time on training and developing our own people on, okay, if they're not sitting next to you, KPIs and metrics are more important.
Yeah.
Communications, regular scheduled meetings and touch bases and daily huddles and all of that stuff is exponentially more important, right? Having the appropriate tools and be able to share the knowledge bases and playbooks and SOPs are now all of a sudden that much more important. And all of those things, I don't think we have enough conversations around that.
We
Um,
don't, Russell. And I'll just share with you that, I've had a 20-year career in corporate America with
yep,
Fortune 100 companies. So, I mean, the big
yep,
boys, right?
yeah,
And I will share with you that 75% of my career, even obviously before the pandemic, because I'm older, was remote. I was in global roles that I did travel quite a bit, but I worked out of a remote office. And so when the pandemic happened, I'm not gonna lie to you, I didn't understand what the big deal was with people switching because I had done it my entire life. And it just shows you my worldview versus
Yeah.
others. I
Hmm.
led global teams of individuals, and we just traded off, who's going to have the time zone hit. When we had team meetings,
Yep.
I
Who's
held some at
sacrificing? Who's waking up at
midnight.
2 a.m.? That's it. Yeah, exactly.
You have an alarm clock. We'll rise, and we would trade off time zones of who got the short stick. But it was part of team building, laughing, and usually, I gave the person who had the short stick, additional time off to regroup. There are ways to manage through that. And we had a very high performing team, if I do say so
Yeah.
myself. So
Well,
I totally agree with
a
your
little biased, but yeah, I'm sure. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, yeah,
absolutely.
like the same. When the pandemic hit, it was like this big deal.
Yeah,
And it's like, well, yeah, we've been doing that for 15 years. So
a
it's like,
long time.
it's not like it was not a big deal for us, obviously. And honestly, I like it. I think, look, if I take myself out of it and unbiased as I possibly can, I think this is good
Yeah,
for the American business and how small business owners run their business. I think it's important that they learn how to do this because there's a reason why these Fortune 100s and Fortune 500s are the size that they are. And a lot of it comes down to this. How do you
yes,
manage people remote? How do you,
exactly.
stay on the same page? How do you rebuild cultures across different offices that you have maybe across the country if you're not global yet or whatever? How do you service, right? Like there's a lot to say about the skill of managing and working with people that are not in the office.
Absolutely. Or not
And
in from your local
uh,
culture as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
And
the
there's a
culture is a
lot of
big piece.
resources you can do to learn about them, and especially business practices and things like that. So they need to take advantage of it.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm curious as well. I'm going to switch and put you on the hot seat a little
sure.
bit,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because you're providing a lot of external talent for organizations. Being in a similar space as you, but from on the HR side of the house, there's always challenges with, even if you are a supplier, keeping your talent, keeping them utilized, motivating them, helping them to onboard great with clients. What's a few examples of things that you have that are top of mind for you, for your own talent that you are placing at organizations?
Yeah, it's really, I mean, it's funny that you say that because you went right to it. It probably has to do with your experience with doing this in the first place because most people don't think about that. My organization, my company, like, my job, I guess we'll start there. My job in the organization is really more of the consultation. I work a lot with customers on their side of the business because I
Sure.
come from a consulting background, right? I come from working with these large organizations that used to hire me to go fly to India and start their call center for them,
Right.
right? That's what my job was for a long
Right.
time. And so I understand and I can put my sort of hat from their side of the table of, well, here somebody needs to learn the operations first before we can go and outsource it. And
Right.
so in our business and the way our service model is set up, which is your employee, right? So you, Karen, if you were to hire somebody through us, it would basically be your employee. We would just manage the HR, the payroll, the office infrastructure, the IT, sort of the legalities of employing this person and so on. But the day-to-day sort of performance management, the sort of the task allocation that you give them and what you have them work on a day-to-day basis is managed by you. It's your employee in our office. So the role of our company in this model is really we're just HR folks. Our job is to, right, office management, right, infrastructure
Yeah.
management and HR. So our job is to make a really cool work environment, make sure the IT stuff works, obviously. But most of our focus, my largest department within the company is HR. And we do a lot in activities. I would say, look, all the fun stuff. I don't know if you saw pictures on the website or anything of our offices, right? But like
I did. Yes.
it's like the old school, Bronx, New York, brick walls in a warehouse converted into an office with,
Office. Yeah.
tables and pool tables, and we have a swimming pool. So the cool office environment is important. Sure. That's all the fun stuff. The free
Yeah.
coffee and the bread snacks and all that good stuff. So that's, I would say, the foundation. You got to start with, do people want to be at your location, right? Do they want to come to work? But that it can't stop there. I think a lot of it will then evolve into like more complex things, which would be your social responsibility, the groups. We have these things called the houses, and everybody joins a house. And these are our core values that are broken into these 5 houses, and everybody joins, and there's competition, and there's a sense of ownership. We have a leadership team amongst that, like a committee. And, these are activities that are during and sometimes outside of work hours, and it allows them to sort of build that relationship and friendship within the organization. I think one of the best things that an organization can do is allow great managers to really shine. And great managers go beyond a really productive workforce. It comes down to the relationships, the trust, all of that sort of stuff. So if as an organization from the executive level is really empowering managers to be great, and that requires more than just daily performance. It requires them to have the power and ability to run the teams that the way that they want to and to fit their personality. And it's okay if the best SEO guy in the United States doesn't work with the manager that manages the SEO team. That's
Right.
okay, because the
It's
two
okay.
of them have to jive. They got to get along. They have to have a good personal working relationship for it to work. So, having great talent is important, but the manager is the person that's running the day to day. That's an important thing. So, for us as an organization, it comes down to building out career development plans. How do we keep people? Why is our retention really good in terms of industry standard? It's probably because we spend a lot of time with our customers saying, hey, a job title change once a year or every couple years, and an annual 3 to 5% bump isn't enough.
Right. Yeah,
We
to do
got to give
more.
them a career.
Yeah,
What's the career
absolutely.
path look like? How are we measuring versus, metrics versus, just I like this person. Like, are there real measuring tools? And a lot of small businesses doesn't have that stuff. So you coming from corporate America, like career tracks, these
Yeah.
exist at, the Amazons and Amexes and Microsofts of the world,
Yeah.
but they don't exist in everyday small businesses because they think
That's
it's
right.
not important, but it is. People
It
need to
really is.
know, where am I going to be in 5 years? Where am
That's
I
right.
going to be? What targets are available to me? What paths can I take?
We had whole departments that were focused on career tracks for every job function. So,
Yes,
you
we have an
know,
entire department as well focused on working with customers specifically on career track,
that's
building
amazing.
out CDP plans and working with them on what are the PIPs and when do we want to trigger them, and what time do we allocate per day or per week for training and cross training and all of these things. Like, that's so valuable to retain people. And I don't mean offshore. I mean anywhere. And so
Anywhere.
that's something that people should talk more about. And look, I get it. Corporate governance sucks. I'll be the first to tell you. Okay,
Yeah.
corporate governance and structure, and having not being able to, as a manager, give a couple $1,000 annual raise when somebody does a good job is, oh, I got to go through the compensation and benefits department, but we have an entire department for that. Okay, that sucks. And oh, there's a career track and there's salary ranges, and everything is based off of a metric based incentive,
It's hard to
progression plan.
navigate that.
It's
And you
hard
want
to
to keep
navigate.
your morale up? It's crazy.
It's hard to navigate that, but there's equity. There's equity
Yeah.
across. There's clear paths for people to grow. It sort of puts everybody in check. And if you're a manager that wants to grow people and keep people, yeah, that's what's necessary,
That's going to be
right? It's really
critical.
what's necessary. If you want people to have 25-year, anniversaries with you as an organization, if you don't provide that, then either A, there isn't enough opportunity in your city or town, or B,
True.
you must really love having barbecues at your house, because there's no other way to maintain people for 25 years unless they have a career plan and you're helping them achieve those goals and meet those not only financial sort of goals, but also just responsibility goals and where they want to be. And if some people don't want to be in management, that's not a problem, but they need to have a
That's
career plan,
absolutely that's absolutely true. That is so correct. And that's why it's so important to offer those and put the effort around it. But partnering with organizations like yours can really help that out. And I'm so sorry that we're running short on time,
That's
but
okay.
we can't let you sneak out of here without asking you our signature question. And For my newer listeners, our firm had done a lot of research on high performing leaders, and we're all leaders at all levels in our own right in whatever we're doing. And we'd love to ask our podcast guests, which of the 7 tactics of high potential leaders really resonated with them. All 7 are equally as important. You use them at different times, but which of the 7 really popped for them? And so Russell was so kind to share that executive presence really resonated with him. And the way we define it is executive presence is your ability to, influence and lead others, through very convincing oral or written arguments. It's like having that type of grit, conversation, and data-backed influence to convince them to follow your lead. So curious minds would love to know, Russell, why does leading with executive presence, why did that really resonate for you?
I read a book called Good to Great. I don't know.
Me
I actually
too.
did this with my entire leadership team, I think a few months back. And in that book, I don't necessarily agree with everything in that book, but putting the managers and great managers in front of the lines to be able to really drive your business is something that really stuck out as something that we as an organization try to do. We're not amazing at it, but we do it. We do it when we can. And I think from an executive level, it's really important that you put things on paper and you give people goals and you have strategic plans. And I think it's important when you look at companies that have come out of nowhere that are privately owned and then all of a sudden go public. Yes, I'm sure they took some VC funding, but a lot of it comes down to great leaders putting things on paper and convincing people to
To follow them.
follow them down that sort of really dark, kind of scary path. Right. And I think
That's
and I
right.
think it's important that we remember that really the company's success comes down to the executive team being able to communicate that down the ranks.
Absolutely. Love that. Well, thank you again for sharing that, Russell. We always love to, now we'll have everything like your bio and everything in the show notes, but we always love to give you a little airtime to let people know where they can find you or the company. So would you mind sharing?
Sure. I'm not big on plugs, but you can find our website, ClarkStaff.com, CLARK staff.com. We also have a few other brands that we sort of market under, same business model, same everything, but specific to industry. So Nectar BPO, the Branding Bees are just a couple of those other ones that we launched specific for various industries.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Russell, for being a guest on the podcast. I think you saw me feverishly writing down a ton of notes. This has been extremely insightful, and we thank you for the gift of your time.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Awesome. And thank you to listeners for the gift of your time. As you know, we do not take your patronage lightly because there are literally millions of other podcasts you could be listening to. All we ask is that you like or subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform of choice and just share our podcast with just one friend, because by doing so, we can all get smarter about blended workforces at work. Thanks a ton and see you here next week. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you again for listening to the Blended Workforces at Work podcast. You can check out the show notes, additional episodes, bonus resources, and also submit guest recommendations on our website at blendedworkforcesatwork.com. You can also follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, or YouTube by searching for the name Karen Rhodes, with Karen being spelled Karan. And if you like the show, the greatest gift you can give would be to subscribe and leave a rating on your favorite podcast platform of choice. This podcast has been a production of Shockingly Different Leadership, a global consultancy which helps organizations execute their people, talent development, and organizational effectiveness initiatives on an on-demand, contract, fractional, or project basis. Huge thanks to the SDL production and editing team for a job well done. Bye for now.